Well, greetings and welcome everyone. It's just about 11 a.m. in Atlanta, Georgia, and welcome to another webinar in the series brought to you by MSI Cyber Consortium. We're coming to you from Georgia State University Cyber. And this particular webinar, I need to give credit to AIB's Teaching and Education SIG, who's has been collaborating with us in organizing and delivering these series of international business webinars where we explore education, business practice, certainly many other issues related to international business education and practice. We have conversations with gifted colleagues like we have today, as well as business leaders. And special thanks to Olstrin Shelensky, who's I'm sure in the background also. We have a huge group here today joining us. If this is your first time joining us, welcome and come back again. I should say just a brief background about Cyber MSI Consortium, 10 different cyber strong, delivering these programs for the benefit of the international business education community. We have now offered over 50 different webinars on teaching, on pedagogy, as well as research, as well as conversations with business leaders. These webinars, most of you know already, are recorded. So if you miss it or if you like to share it with your colleagues after the fact, after the event, you'll be able to do that. Webinars will be edited and provided to you through the Georgia State University Cyber website, as also on our YouTube channel. I should also say that when you do exit the program today, you will receive a short survey, just 5 quick questions, that will be eliciting your ideas for future programs and suggestions as well also. I should say also that if you have a question or a comment, please do offer it using the Q&A button. If you need assistance, use the chat button, and one of our Georgia State Cyber team members will be responding to you. So we are, of course, always trying to adhere to an hour-long session, but we may go a little bit over that today, depending upon the flow of the discussion. We will try to leave a few minutes at the end where I will ask Liesel and Andreas to respond to some of your questions. And they will make also available to you after the event their PowerPoints and other resources that they think they will be useful to those of us interested in higher education, business education, and innovation in terms of the graduate portfolio. So today's topic was labeled Designing Sustaining MBA Programs that Reflect Business Relevance and Disrupt the World. It's really about innovation and keeping up with the times and featuring two very highly regarded business leaders in two major business schools, doing some very interesting things and innovating their graduate portfolios. The topic, I think, is very timely because we have all these headwinds, all of these developments, whether it's the changing nature of the programs, the content, the changing nature of the students, as well as technological, instructional technology that we use in our teaching, and of course, modality of teaching. We have seen so much change. Obviously, we all are aware of that, have tried to keep up with it. So the focus will be on the graduate portfolio, in particular, MBA and master's programs, and various innovations that we're seeing around the world, and certainly in North America around those programs. And I think you'll be very pleased to see lots of bright ideas that have been implemented and some results as well. So we'll be covering, in these graduate programs, who is it that we are teaching? What is the current audience like? Who is coming to our MBA programs and specialized master's programs? Who is teaching these programs? How are we teaching, modality and platforms? And of course, what is the content about? What is it that we are teaching in these programs? So I'm so pleased today to be able to feature two very good colleagues, very accomplished colleagues, and good friends as well. Let me start with Professor Liesl Riddle. Liesl, welcome. Please allow me to say a few things. I will keep this short. Obviously, there's a lot to share, both about you and Andreas as well. But Liesl is currently the Vice Dean for Strategy and Associate Professor of International Business and International Affairs at George Washington University School of Business. Previously, she was the Associate Dean for graduate programs for 7 years in over 2 non-consecutive terms. And I know you designed the school's online MBA and MS Information Systems and Technology Management programs. And also you led the development of the instructional design team and the studio at the School of Business at George Washington University as well. I know you've been very busy since 2018 and spearheading a comprehensive reimagination of your programs, graduate programs. You revised the curricula for 6 different formats of the MBA. You developed 5 specialized master's degrees, something like 18 graduate certificates, launched 3 new business master's degrees. And I think most recently, you've been collaborating with your technology and engineering colleagues in developing some STEM MBA as well as specialized masters and stackable. I'm very much looking forward to hear about your stackable programs, certificate programs as well. So you certainly, as a result of all these efforts and innovation, you've seen some really good, remarkable results in terms of double-digit growth in graduate applications, enrollments, and rankings as well. I know many others know Liesl from her publications as well. She is one of those colleagues who's done a lot of work on diasporas and development, international entrepreneurship, trade, and investment promotion. Liesl conducts action research through diaspora engagement. She's worked with several international organizations, including the UNDP, World Bank, USAID, International Organization for Migration, and others as well. She is also, of course, affiliated. In fact, Liesl oversees the CIBER program, one of our partners in these webinar series. We're very pleased to recognize that. George Washington University CIBER, one of the best in the league. And you've been involved with CIBER since its inception at George Washington. Liesl obviously is a master teacher. I've seen her in action. She regularly teaches in our pedagogy workshops and a very popular, sought after master teacher. She's received many teaching awards at George Washington, the most prestigious university award, George Washington Award, and then also School of Business Teaching Excellence Award. Liesl, I think I've known you since you were at Texas Austin, UT Austin, in the PhD program. So it's been a long time where you obtained your bachelor's and master's degrees and Middle Eastern Studies, MBA in Marketing and IB, and a PhD degree in Sociology at UT Austin. So very, very much welcome, Liesl. Thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Our pleasure. So now I have my pleasure to introduce another distinguished colleague, Andreas Schotter, joining us from Ivey Business School in Ontario, Canada. So we have truly an international community here. In fact, Andreas is a lot more international than some of us. He's worked and lived and taught in almost every continent, Andreas, in Europe, Asia, Australia, certainly now you're in Canada, North America as well. Andreas is Associate Professor of International Business and also Ivy Business School's Academic Director of the Global Alliance Masters in International Management Program. Andreas holds the Jones Faculty Fellowship. He's also the John Dunning Fellow at Henley Business School at the University of Reading in the UK. And Andreas, you were previously at Thunderbird School of Global Management in Arizona. We know that school, of course, very well as well. Andreas has been recognized and honored by the Wall Street Journal that named him twice, actually, as the Wall Street Journal Distinguished Professor of the Year. And he is an international management and leadership expert. He works with executives and multinational companies on challenges, opportunities posed by the rapidly developing global economy in terms of decision-making, agile decision-making, keeping up with a complex and turbulent work. Andreas, you've done work on multinationals in terms of lateral collaboration, boundary spanning, global value chain disruption, international staffing, and the future of work. Very interesting as well. You also are very well published in the Academy Management Journal, Journal of Management Studies, Human Resource Management, JIBS, and other outlets, major outlets as well, and authored several cases, in fact, something like 20 cases. Some of them have become very well used and bestsellers. So with that, Andreas, welcome to you as well. Pleased to have you here. Let me then begin this conversation, and let me ask each of you, Liesl, maybe you first, describe your current role. I said a few things, but I don't think it does justice. So please tell us in terms of the graduate portfolio, especially your role.
Well, thank you, Tamara. Thank you for that lovely introduction. I mean, when you list all of those things, I hope it's obvious to the audience that that is certainly not something I did by myself. I mean, I just have the great fortune of really being in an institution and working with a bunch of faculty directors that are thinking, I think, very creatively about the future. So in terms of my new role right now, I just started this summer. And this is a role at the school level, working with our dean in terms of thinking about the overall school strategy. I've spent, as you mentioned, the last 7 years, actually with 2 different tours of duty and a little bit of a break in between, working on graduate strategy, which is what we're here today to talk about. But a lot of the issues that we're facing in graduate programs, particularly around today's topic, I think around skills, actually sort of transcends just the world of graduate, right? It's really rethinking what business schools are actually doing and where we're going in this post-pandemic future. So I feel very, very fortunate to continue to work in that strategic realm now, just at a different level.
Excellent. Thank you, Liesl. Andreas, tell us about the current role that you have, the leadership role in the graduate programs.
Yeah, I can just echo what Liesl just said about the support and the colleagues I've been working with here. It's similar. Ivy is known for the cases for high engagement. I call it actually not the case method, high engagement learning methodology. My current role is I'm the academic director of our Global Alliance program. It's a program that now spans practically all continents except for Antarctica, with 33 schools. I've been doing this for about 8 years now. I've been the director for our now defunct Beijing EMBA endeavor. We unfortunately, that's a different story. I'm also part of the pilot faculty in a new accelerated MBA that is asynchronous synchronous, comes to the topic here today. I'm actively writing cases. I'm one of the main reviewers of all outside cases that come into Ivy. We have a fairly elaborate review process now, which we didn't have before when there were pure submissions. I am, and you will see from the discussion later on, very much see my role as straddling the three main pillars that we have as academics, and I think they're all important, from teaching, research, and service, and that almost throws us into the topic today. And with all the long introductions, I think I'm ready to roll now.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you, Andreas. Thank you for that introduction. Liesl, maybe I can start with you and have both of you respond to this. Let's start with the target audience first. Who is it that we are teaching? And it's a diverse body, isn't it? I mean, not just across in terms of the master's programs, but across regions and types of schools and countries, and also different programs in the graduate portfolio.
I think it's been really exciting to work in graduate schools of business in the last decade, because I think, you know, traditionally our bread and butter, right, used to be the career climbers, right? Those that were in maybe the late 20s, but definitely early to mid 30s, and maybe sometimes even older. And then of course we had the executive MBA audience. But things I think have really changed quite a bit for a variety of reasons. I think, you know, lots of reports come out about the need for greater skills, and, you know, employers seeking higher levels of skills prior to even entry level jobs. And I think the pandemic only made the pressures on students coming out with BBAs, BAs, and just really any undergraduate degree under a lot more pressure. And so typically that pressure then often, you know, results in a student thinking, where can I go get, you know, this next level education? So I think we have this large and growing pre-experience market, I think right out of undergrad, that's very skills focused. And then kind of in the mid-career, what we're seeing, I think a lot, is really the desire to switch careers, switching careers maybe much earlier than people used to think about doing that in their lives. And so those are big asks, I think, particularly in full-time MBA programs, where a student comes in and says, I'm X today, and in 2 years, I want to be Y. And that's not just, I want to have the knowledge and skills of Y, but I also want the professional network of Y. And then again, with all this sort of skills pressure, we're now seeing a newly emerging, where I think there's a lot of opportunity for us in upskilling and reskilling. And many of these are people already with an MBA. So they're not really executive MBA targets. They're looking for something else, and often something shorter than a full degree. So I see in that, I think, a real shift in terms of how we think about our target market, and then that resulting how we think about our portfolio.
Interesting. Is the diversity of the student body in terms of gender diversity also something that you observe, Lisa, at your school?
Yes, I mean, we're very excited that the last couple of years we've had over 50%. We've been one of the few schools in the full-time MBA space that have been attracting over 50% female into our full-time MBA program. But we actually have a strong representation of women. 9 of our 15 different graduate programs, we have over 50% female. But that's been a long trend, I think, in GW. But I think in general in the industry, a lot more women, particularly now because of the pandemic. Many women that are now out of work are using this time in the pandemic, particularly online, to go back and look at graduate business education.
Very interesting. Andreas, how do you see your current profile, and also from from your travels, the changing profile of the students who come to graduate programs at Ivy and elsewhere?
Yeah, I think you can almost write a strategy textbook from what I've been seeing for the last 15 years in this whole idea about the market in MBAs. You see a gross oversupply of seats in the market. which has created a lot of confusion, a lot of debate from external stakeholders, particularly about the value of the title MBA. Literally, Thunderbird, who I still love very much, they struggle as a standalone school when they switched from an MIM to an MBA to compete in the marketplace more. I'm glad where it's going right now. Just a side note, love that school still. But this is just symptomatic what happened in the entire market, right? So we see huge competition, discounting, different formats, confusion about who is a school, who's not a school. We see the desire of younger and younger students to get this MBA title behind their name, since education is a strong signaling tool to employers. And we see questioning of the value of the MBA through all these turbulences from the supply side, from our side in the market, but then also from the demand side, from the students who have to turn out quite some money to get these 3 letters behind their name. So what I see here is a clear, we are moving from a fragmentation into a specialization phase, and those schools who do it better, they're picking up on the relevant specializations and specialization in terms of what we are talking today about, who we teach, to be very clear that a program really caters to a specific demographic. And I don't mean it from an EDI perspective, I mean it more from a career focus and outcome perspective. The EDI piece, we're doing the same thing. It's front and center of our new strategy here at IB2, and it's not easy as such. But really we are really creating more and more programs in between programs, from the Master of Science program in International Business, which is a pre-experience program. Pre-experience means up to 2 years of studies, to our advanced MBA intake program, which actually looks at our HBAs to provide them with the opportunity to move into the MBA a bit earlier with 3 to 4 years experience, to our part-time, now accelerated MBA program, which is parallel to the MBA, which targets the audience, Liesl says, late 20s, early 30s, up to the executive MBA, which is like at many other schools. But we really focus very, very much to make sure that we create as little cannibalization internally as possible, right? And all these programs deliver the appropriate format for this particular audience. And from a content perspective, we are trying to accommodate the outcome needs, and that goes towards skills, but also towards the meaningfulness of the MBA. And if you ever have watched the FedEx commercial about the MBA student coming in and not being able to work in shipping, it's a very famous little commercial. You can Google that, FedEx MBA student, or YouTube it. It's funny. We're trying to avoid this kind of situation when we processing students, but no doubt about it. What I feel right now is I feel fairly comfortable that with the acceleration of these new program offerings and the changes we're having, we're actually well positioned, and the MBA student market is not disappearing, right? So that we are playing a good role right now. Could be better. We could have much better geographical reach. I think Liesl is doing a much better job in that regard, but it's also a Canadian thing to not have that kind of reach.
So I think you're right. Definitely the audience is there and more joining as well and more diverse as well. But to some extent, because of the proliferation, fragmentation that you talked about of the programs, we now have all kinds of degree programs. It used to be just the MBA, then the EMBA, executive MBA, evening MBA, and then specialized masters and so on. Liesl, are we creating a confusion in the minds of some people? And then this makes it very difficult for you to be able to crystallize exactly what each program offers for whom. So communication strategy becomes very important, isn't it?
Yeah, I really agree. I think that, when you're trying to when you're trying to serve such a large and diverse market, I think it does become a real challenge. And I think, again, that's another reason why we kind of think about it as career stage marketing, thinking about going after with our communication strategy, certain programs for certain career stages, rather than trying to market the whole portfolio to everyone, because it's not for everyone. But I also think a really key element here is having a very well-informed, very flexible, creative admissions and recruiting team. We're very fortunate to have a strong team here at GWSB. And I think because you have to start first with who is the student and what do they want on the other side of the degree, and then look at your diverse portfolio and figure out what matches you have for them. And so it's much more of a student-centric, sort of customized, I think, promotional interaction than it is, here's our program and here's why it's the best.
Interesting, very good. So in that regard, I'm thinking of now focusing on the attention, who is delivering these programs, who's teaching? Both of you are multidimensional folks. I mean, you're not traditional faculty. You have quite a bit of experience and practice. You work with international organizations. You traveled. You carry active research plus administrative duties. You certainly are delivering also teaching, I'm sure, in these programs. But who are the people, Andreas, that you put in front of these students at various levels?
Yeah, thank you. That's the question Lisa and I have really in the pre-discussion pondered about. The fact is that we as schools are under tremendous pressure to utilize faculty the very best, and reputation hangs off, not reputation, but also a very big pillar hangs on research. And there is often a tone that I encounter with some colleagues, with all due respect, and I've been on the AOM International Business Teaching Committee for the last almost 8 years, but it's not there, right? But there's a tone sometimes that teaching is almost a burden, a chore, a punishment. And first of all, I don't want to have those people teaching my program, right? You can choose something else, do whatever you want. Don't teach in my program, right? It's not my program that I'm overlooking. That's the first thing. Secondly, we want to have someone who understands the basic goal of the program and the mission of this particular program, and is invested in achieving these outcomes. And then, depending on the audience that we believe is the best to recruit, and I'm going to Lisa, upfront recruiting in the program, practically one of the most important jobs for a successful program as such. I would now really slow it down and say it's almost more important than this particular faculty member who teaches it, right? To understand who comes in, because you can work with most faculty. So what I see, we need a good mix of this traditional academic who stands on these three pillars on teaching, research, or research, teaching, and service, but then also master teachers, right? However, we cannot just throw them into a program, right? These master teachers, and as well as the traditional, maybe less practical, experienced academics, they both need to be mentored into the right teaching, and it needs to be managed by the program as such. So who's teaching? It's actually not really, we asked this question, I know, Lisa and I, it's not the only part that's important who's teaching. It's really, who are we allowed to teach in the program, and how are we able to work with these particular individuals to deliver the program according to its mission and purpose. And I have people who are 27 years of age, half my age, traditional PhDs coming out of a master's program, just fresh in the market. They're as excellent as someone who has been a long time out in the field, very accomplished researcher, or a master teacher who comes from practice. But the key here is, if you understand who teaches in the program, how can I make sure that they're teaching to their strengths? And how can I make sure that they align with the program learning objectives that we are having there? Right? I'm kind of danced a little bit around the question, but that's how I see it.
Yeah, it is a challenge, isn't it? I mean, these are on the same point. I mean, it's not just designing the program, but also staffing it with the right people who feel good about it, I mean, enthusiastic, and who are qualified and who can communicate well, and also, convey a degree of legitimacy to put in front of these people with some of them with a lot of business experience. So one of the things they need to be able to demonstrate is that they can relate to their audience, they can communicate with them. So how do you resolve that?
One more comment, Camille, one more comment on that one. Who's teaching? The person or the individuals that are collaborative, they are willing to work across outside of their own course, right? And who are not utility maximizers trying to teach the same stuff to the undergrads, graduates, executives, and so on, without modifying the prep according to the program, right? So these people teach in the programs, right? And it looks like I have full control over the faculty. I don't. Our system of area groups and assigning teaching in many ways, of course, throws the wrench into this. Right? It's not easy to maintain that. Sorry, Lisa, I didn't want to take out.
It is. I can imagine. I appreciate it. It's not easy. Lisa, on the same point.
I mean, I think there are some design elements, but as you mentioned, they're maybe not the strongest levers to solve the problem. So things that we've tried to do are things like creating 1-hour skill building courses that are really labeled as skills, right? And those are more, we have some faculty members that want to teach in that particular area, but then we also have a lot of adjunct faculty that also want to teach and have those knowledge and skills. And some of our alumni come back and actually teach in those one credit hour. Mostly these are sort of intensive. So there's a little bit of that. I think also you can build in practicum courses that, allow students to take all the theory and knowledge that they've learned in other courses and really put it into practice. And you need to make sure you're staffing that with folks that have that kind of consulting background. And sometimes that's already a full-time faculty member or that's an adjunct. But beyond the design elements, I think one of the things that we've really focused a lot of time and intention on at GW has really been on providing that support for faculty. I mean, the demands on our faculty on the research side, as we all know, have increased dramatically. But at the same time, they're facing classrooms that are very different than they were. They're demanding more active learning. They're different generations, sometimes different generations in different career stages in the same classroom. And these are not easy things to face. And so, that's why I think the investment in a teaching and learning center, whether that be at the university level or even better, like we've done it at the school level. I think we started off with the intention of that being a group that would support our online faculty. But many faculty have said to me, it's just nice to have people with PhDs in instructional design in the building that you can go to and say, I'm having this problem, or I'm facing this type of an audience, or do you give me an idea for how I can do this differently? And that leads over into all kinds of modalities, irrespective of it's a teaching and learning really true support group. But I also think we need to think more deeply when things that we're working on that we're not quite there yet, but things that we're trying to tackle this issue is, I think advisory groups, particularly when you have a student group audience that may have interests or industry or skill interests that are maybe far aflung from where your faculty actually are. Or only have a little bit of exposure to, being able to bring that industry advisory group to kind of come in and provide guest speakers or tabletop exercises or projects where students can take the functional areas of business knowledge that the faculty is an expert in, but then apply it to their own unique industry settings. So we're trying to work on how to bring more of that advisory group at the program level into the classroom and working with the faculty. And the last, I think one of the things that we need to do better on, honestly, is because we have so many different programs, is really make sure our faculty have a chance before they meet those students in a classroom to really know who are they meeting, right? What are the unique demands of that particular group? Brainstorm ideas about how to reach that particular group in an effective way, rather than just sort of treating them as all the same kind of graduate student. So I think it takes a multi-dimensional approach to do it well.
It looks like, Lisa, I mean, congratulations, you taught a lot about this issue and you're taking action. You have several measures in place to accommodate this challenge. You're very correct in terms of the demands on faculty time, especially this past year and a half. We've put so much effort into bringing our faculty to be able to deliver online and still keep the audience engaged. And in this respect, we reached out, and they were very helpful in your case as well, to our Center for Excellence in Teaching, and brought these instructional design, instructional support folks who've been very good consultants, who've been very, very good helping, keeping, developing teams with the faculty and helping design, especially content that is suitable for online teaching, which was all new to most of our faculty. But I think having in place that support system makes a big difference, certainly. I'm sure, Andreas, you've done the same thing, providing the support group, whether it's outside advisory group or inside the technical consultants, instructional designers, and so on.
Yes, almost every program at the graduate level, but even to a certain extent the undergrad level, a little bit more complicated there, does have an industry alumni advisory group. Not always easy to handle, because particularly when it comes to the alumni, it's a very sometimes romantic view of the program how it should be, and this was my previous school already the case. So it requires some management, but on the other hand, what Lisa just said, I can only echo. While in previous years it was resting on the program director and on whatever teaching oversight committee exists at the school to make sure that learning outcomes and courses and so on won't go and programs won't go rogue. Most critical addition and the most valuable addition, I think, to teaching excellence at the entire school level, not just at the program level, is the implementation of our EdTech team. And the EdTech team, and I'm now not shamelessly pitching my boundary spanner piece, but they are really acting like that, And I have to say, when I started with our accelerated MBA, with the hybrid asynchronous synchronous program, I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know what existed. The platform was thrown at me. Without these people, I would not have succeeded. And to me, they became not just helping me to provide a product that is aligned. They also showed me what others were doing, what colleagues were doing. They created a completely new relationship within the school for me as a teacher, and helped me to become better than I, right? And I think this particular element to be added to the school, it's a wise investment. And only those schools who are able to create something like that in the future will succeed in times of exponential increase in expectations of our student body that's coming in, or our targeted student body, right? Critical element to me. So I completely echo what Lisa said. And when I described this to her in our pre-discussion, I said, holy moly, I thought we are ahead, we are behind, right? So it's kind of interesting, right?
You're very right. I mean, we've all gone through that, and we've been amazed how much we can learn, despite, in my case, at a very late stage. But I didn't master it as well as some of my colleagues did, but they've come a long way, baby, as the saying goes. And those folks were very, very helpful. We're forever grateful to them. Maybe, Liesl, we can switch to another dimension of the graduate portfolio, the formality, the formats and modality of how we teach the students. So how has that changed over time?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, I think when online first came more mainstream into the MBA space, it seemed like a lot of institutions were keeping sort of their online group separate. In some cases, full separate faculty, but many times sort of all separate student body. And we've kind of, from an early stage, took a little bit of a different approach, mostly just for competitive reasons. In our particular market, there's a large drive time to work and home and lots of traffic. And so we figured that there probably would be demand for students to be able to switch up, semester to semester. We have a very large part-time audience who we heard in our market research, they never really knew, what their working hours and free time was going to be. And it kind of changed based on projects and sort of year over year. And so when we built our online MBA program in 2013, that program was made in parallel with our regular part-time MBA. Same faculty, same curriculum, and we staggered the offerings so that students could have a wider offering in each semester, but they would have a choice. They'd have some courses that would be offered online, some would be offered face-to-face. And if you wanted to do your whole program online, you could. You just needed to make sure you worked closely with your advisor to know when all of those different courses in the sequence were going to be offered. If you wanted to do it all face-to-face, similarly. But if you wanted to kind of pick and choose, you had that option as well. And the majority, actually, of our part-time MBA students opted for a mix. And they told us that's one of the reasons why they picked the program. So for us, I think we always sort of thought about online, on campus, running in parallel with that set of options. And I'll tell you, and with our same faculty, and I'll tell you, I'm so glad we did that because I think it made the pivot to the COVID environment so much easier because it was already sort of seen as integrated. We have 6 master's programs now, all fully online, and 10 graduate certificates, but it's all seen as part of the same portfolio and same faculty bench.
Interesting, very good. Andreas, what has been your experience with the changing modality and formats?
It's interesting. When I came back to Ivy 8 years ago, spoke to our former associate dean at the time, and we just, like so many schools, we just put the monument on campus, brand new, beautiful business school that's totally geared. It's a pleasure to teach in this building face-to-face, but that's totally geared towards face-to-face. And at the time I asked, so how is it going with online? How is it going? No, we believe in face-to-face. That's our bread and butter. And this answer came from, partly it was generational, partly it came from a which was perceived interesting and good program, but rather clunky way to implement remote MBA teaching through a video conferencing hub location model. So students would go to 3 different hubs and would sit in the classroom. There would be a screens for the faculty, and they would actually teach simultaneously at three different classrooms where students of anywhere 15 to 20 people would congregate and have that experience. Right? It's kind of, and that was very tech intensive at the time with the tech that was available, and it was a somewhat mixed experience, but there was a lot of burden on the faculty doing this at the time. So out of this came this whole comment about, no, we are face-to-face. That's the only thing you can do, or you can do high engagement learning based on the case method. And then COVID hit, really. I mean, before COVID, we already started to really look intensively in HPX and other initiatives, how that was disrupt us. But COVID was really accelerated this transformation. The biggest hurdle that holds us back right now is that model. One course is 12 3-hour sessions, right? Or half course is 12 3-hour sessions, or 24 or 21.5-hour sessions, and that's a currency as a faculty member you have to pay. You're getting paid by the hour. So really an industry 1.0 model in a time when we're moving to industry 4.0, and we're teaching this stuff all the time, right? It's kind of, the problem in a very administrative environment, how can I make sure that the person who's teaching is not shirking, right? And the only measurement that's there is time put in, right? And the same comes to the learning. And I think with COVID, we have been able to teach in different ways, and it became very clear that you cannot just translate the live class. Everyone in this webinar knows that, into a Zoom environment, right? We don't want it. It doesn't work. You can throw different tech at it. You can throw gimmicks at it. You can do exercises through the Yazoo. It drives you crazy at the end of the day. I think what we are seeing is we need to maintain the program focus, but we need to start to take the best away from each of these learnings that we have had over the last 18 months and create the very best customized learning experience. For example, and I will not go too long, our accelerated MBA, as I said, is 40% asynchronous online and 60% face-to-face. And the face-to-face part is very much focused on the case teaching. Now, that didn't work very well last year with COVID. It was on Zoom. It worked actually well on Zoom, but it didn't work, this mix, right? And when we started to have this 40-60 mix across all courses, right? Because it would be unfair that one faculty would teach 80% face-to-face and 20% asynchronous online, while the other teaches 80% asynchronous and only 20% face-to-face, which would make perfect sense when you look at the course content and the deliverables, right? But again, the administrative hurdle, right, has created this. And my great hope is that we start to be much more flexible around these models that we have created over the last 18 months and allow for different forms of delivery, because that's the way forward. And at the end of the day, I really dislike calling a student a customer, but at the end of the day, it's the supply side of the learning experience, of that contract between teacher and student to engage in a learning process. It's the supply side that will tell us, yep, that's working, that's not working. So we have to address the student needs, and we have to find a way to also teach the demographic in a way that is correct for them, and it's not the model we had experienced 20, 30, or 40 years ago when we went through the process. Right?
It does take a lot of creativity and also experimentation, trial and error sometimes, but finding the best way, because we had to do all of that, especially in this disruptive environment last year and a half. That may lead us to another segment, another discussion, the content. But before that, Lisa, related to that, actually, I see now you have innovated, and we've done the same thing with these stackable certificates, which seem to be highly in demand. I see this in application at Georgia State University, Robinson College as well. We have in our MIB program, for example, Master of International Business program, a certificate in global supply chain management that the student can earn, as well as one on international entrepreneurship and so on. Tell us a little bit about your thinking and rationale behind stackable certificates. And also, most recently, you did something very difficult to do in a university environment, working across campus with another college, engineering technology college, and developing STEM programs and technology management programs. I mean, that's not a small feat. I mean, it takes a lot of effort, initiative in a university environment. Tell us about that experience as well, please.
Yeah, sure. I mean, the original idea behind graduate certificates is something that I think many of us actually already face when we think about concentrations, right? It's this idea of trying to put a signature, an often case skill signature, on the MBA degree. But I think in our case, there was this idea of, could we actually create a simultaneous credential that the student could earn as part and parcel of the MBA and call it a graduate certificate next. But as we started to look at the data about upskilling and reskilling needs, and started to think about particularly our alumni and what their learning needs might be, as we started to try to refocus on what does it really mean to be a lifelong learning focused graduate school of business or school of business, we started to say, well, maybe we should look at these graduate certificates with a little bit of a different light, rather than just sort of the finisher on your degree program, like you would think like a concentration. Instead, why don't we think about it as its own unique learning journey, so that, you know, you start with whatever the core principles are in theory that the student would need to know in the given area, and the methods, and then some applications and some elective options to customize it a bit. And so that really got us looking at, well, we have all these other specialized master's degrees already in the portfolio. To what extent might those first 4 courses or first 3 courses make sense for, say, an MBA student? We all have dual degrees. So would those first couple of courses have that sort of standalone learning journey kind of way? So we turned to the faculty directors and started to look at that. So ultimately, most of our graduate certificates that we first started off with, we now have 27, but the majority of them are really based on the backbone of our existing specialized master's degree. The others that aren't were built with looking at number one, enrollments in elective courses. So popular elective courses already. So you already had some demand side preference for some of those courses. We knew we were going to offer them anyway because they were highly in demand, but also matches with skill needs that came out of our survey of our employers. And so we again sort of packaged a couple like that that are more narrower than even our specialized masters. But as you mentioned, we just announced yesterday, we have this partnership now with our School of Engineering and Applied Sciences at the GW campus to offer 3 new graduate certificates in areas where they already have a deep bench and well-known renowned programs in crisis management, environmental systems management, and energy management. We have faculty that teach in a lot of those areas as well. We don't necessarily have, in the School of Business, we don't have quite a deep as bench, but now students can take some courses from the School of Business, some courses from the School of Engineering, and again, have that sort of engineering signature on the degree program. But again, our graduate certificates are designed to be standalone, so you can take it for upskilling and reskilling. They can stack into our master's degrees. You can also stack them on top of one another. So we have a Master's of Interdisciplinary Business Studies, which you choose 2 of the certificates that kind of complement one another. And our advisors work close with our students to help them figure that out. And then integrative elective courses that help integrate across the two areas. So they're both standalone as well as stackable.
So thank you so much, Lisa, for that background. And there's a few questions that I'll ask you from the participants. I'll ask you to respond in a minute. But Andreas, Lisa mentioned crisis management, for example. We've seen certain topics surface, especially in the disruptive environment that we are in now. Like risk management has become a very popular concentration for our students. Entrepreneurship has become very popular. Strategy is always strong. What trends do you see in terms of what you teach, the modules as well as the courses, maybe certificate programs as well, that seem to be in demand and in line with what the market offers right now? You yourself focus on agility, for example, agile organizations and transformation. What trends do you see?
Let me throw a little bit of a curveball. First, I would like to just echo and emphasize what Lisa said. It's one of the most important points made today. If you are able to create these stackable, and you pointed it out, Tamir, thank you very much, these stackable certificate programs, we have been talking about this for a long time. But if you're able to implement that and wrap a degree around it, right, then this is really, I think, part of the future. It goes into the content answer in a second. We are unfortunately it's not easy for us to implement because we are at the end of the day governed by the Ontario government, and pushing it through this system, right, with these kind of information is really, really, really hard, right? But you know, if you're persistent, if it moves in, it goes up to lobbying MPs, your members of parliament. That's how difficult it is for us to create these degrees around the stackable certificates, right? But we're getting there. We're slowly getting there. Unfortunately, not as fast as Lisa and the team. Second thing, working across campus is huge for us, right? And most popular undergrad programs are dual programs with the law school and with the engineering school. These are the most in-demand students for sure. We also have programs at the medical school. Now we're building a completely new building on campus that integrates the entrepreneurship idea and takes it out of the entrepreneurship demand, as you just said, that is arising in a lot of these different fields, particularly in engineering, also in the med school, also in science to a certain degree, but also in the business school, and unifies it as a separate hub on campus that actually works as a central point to create these across campus linkages. They just broke ground on a completely new building, not part of the business school, part of the university, but the business school is the main driver behind that in implementation. When it comes to content, I told Liesel when we had the pre-discussion, this is my most important answer for myself, not for you maybe, but for myself. About 8-9 years ago, I got a real personal crisis as a teacher. I started to read more and more of the McKinsey Global Institute and BCG and PwC, whatever. They all have some knowledge creation, dissemination, kind of fancy department, and they're trying to leverage their knowledge and sometimes packages it as research. And I said, holy, these guys are much more agile than we are. They have all the right words out there. They package this in a way that I don't even have the resources to translate into managerial relevant knowledge. And in executive education, of course, I'm drawing sometimes from these pieces. But then something happened to me through the Academy of Management, and I went very, very directly back to theory. And I think this is something that we have over these particular consulting businesses or other learning ventures that are outside of the of properly trained scholars, right? This teacher-scholar model. So we do have theory that looks at causality. And 20 years ago, it was all about change management in exec education. Then it became transformational leadership. Today, it's managing disruption. And you look at the underlying principles, right? They are very much the same. They're getting contextualized to today's world, 100%. But if you're going back, really, you don't need to reinvent all that. It's not something new. It's really buzzword galore out there. And as a proper scholar who stands solid on these two pillars, research and teaching, right? Then I think you're adding much more value to your students. And it should not be a popularity contest in terms of courses. A program should be designed holistically, not just for the first day of the program. It's a lifelong bucket of knowledge that you activate along the way. There's an entrepreneurship part, yes, important. There's a so-called hard skills part, yes, important, right? But there are all these other topics that are equally important as our graduates move through their careers or potentially change their careers. But to me, the key is make theory accessible, relevant, and link them to useful outcomes. Go to causality, go away from correlations only. Sorry, I seem to be passionate about
Andreas, I find that to be very insightful. Actually, thank you for making that point. It's very important. Like you, I mean, I find the management consultants' work to be very valuable. They have these beautiful charts, especially you can use in your teaching. You know, they express that complex world in beautiful exhibits. They're very, very creative in that. And of course, they bring, you know, new trends and, you know, most recent state-of-the-art best practice and so on. But the fact that they still do not do what we do, which is to teach and offer these undergraduate and graduate programs, suggests that we have a value added there as business schools, as business faculty, because otherwise they would eat our lunch. And so hopefully we're not going to be made redundant by management consulting companies. And as you say, I think it's the theory that's also very, very important that we need to certainly convey, communicate, and make sure that students understand that cause-effect relationship, theoretical frameworks. Yeah. Liesl, do you want to comment on this issue? And then there's also, I see you answered a couple of questions. Thank you for doing that from our participants. One of them, I think it's the same participant, and we're going to try to wrap up here. Do you have agreements with OPMs or marketing firms for marketing? So, you know, communication, marketing assistance from outside organizations in terms of promoting, publicizing. I think this is what the colleague is asking for.
Yeah, we only have an OPM arrangement right now with a niche MBA program. It's a large program, but it's sort of a niche area, the healthcare MBA program, which is actually our one all online program that we offer. And we've been partnering with Pearson since, believe it or not, that program was started in 2007, excuse me, in the very, very early stages of online education. And we've been partnering with first MBANet and now Pearson pretty much since the inception of that program. But for the rest of our programs, we have our own in-house marketing and communications team. We have, as I mentioned, a very robust admissions and recruiting team as well that works hand in hand with that team. I think one of the key issues in this type of marketing is thinking about two things. One that I've mentioned before, career segment marketing, so that you're talking about offering a portfolio to a limited portfolio to different market segments. And so you attack those market segments with different platforms, with different messages, with different images, but you're also targeting, marketing different programs to them. I think that's one thing. I think the second is because of our programmatic breadth, that also we are marketing more in terms on customization, flexibility, and skills rather than in a specific area. So it's just a different way of sort of thinking about how to market yourself and how you position yourself.
You emphasize the importance of teams, folks coming from different backgrounds, fulfilling different functions on the intake, for example, as well as outtake. You mentioned career services, for example. I mean, they are also part of this team because it's still a competitive marketplace in terms of students graduating from your programs. Helping them and placing them, I think, is some of the things that we can deliver. And I think that makes your program more successful at the end.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned career services, because honestly, it also requires a rethinking of career services. As the more you bring in more of these pre-experienced students, they have the same placement demand needs as your full-time MBA students, right? And so that puts more pressure on your career services team. In many cases, career services teams have been leaning a little bit more heavily into placing full-time MBAs for a variety of reasons. Mm-hmm. But now those pre-experienced students sort of widen that way of that responsibility. So it's important to think about, when you kind of think about changing the portfolio, all of the different support systems that underpin portfolio management.
Mm-hmm. Very, very good. Very important. We'll wrap up, and I'll ask each of you to offer some final thoughts, final comments, but it's been illuminating and educational for me, and we've had over 100 people joining us today. Andreas, maybe we can start with you, some final thoughts and comments, and maybe what you anticipate to see down the road.
Yeah, what I anticipate down the road, what I hope for down the road, is that we become more flexible and start really moving as educational institutions into the industry 4.0 world, and don't make ourselves irrelevant by hanging on to a very transactional model in many ways, both from the institution and sometimes from the faculty perspective. I think it's exciting to move forward. I think it keeps you, I always say that my students get younger and younger every year. That's the most wonderful thing about this career, that this is the case, right? That it keeps you on your toes. And I have changed perspectives completely nowadays, right? From being a former executive. So, I mean, I thought 15 years ago when I entered academia, I made them all the best manager they can be, and that's the model I have been working. I totally chuck that to the side. It's not that I'm not bringing my practice experience or my executive experience, but I also know that I'm a better manager today than I was when I was a manager. And I would like to enable the students to be that too, right, in the future. And what I hope out of this is that at the school institutional level, as well as the individual faculty level, who is, you know, those people who are on here today, that you take that to heart and you know, fulfill that purpose that is behind this part of the job. And there's a selection bias here, right? Most people who attend here are very interested in this in the first place. Don't get discouraged by administrative hurdles. Just push them through.
Very good.
Liesl.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Andreas. Liesl, some final thoughts?
You know, I think what we have to remember is that I think all of us got into higher education because we love learning. And I think the way I try to reframe it in my mind, sometimes when I feel overwhelmed about all of the constant changing and the uncertainty and having to do new things, is that, you know, this is just continuing all of our own learning journeys. And instead of framing them as challenges, framing them as opportunities to keep learning and keep true to our mission of preparing the next generation to take this world forward. And solve its very big problems that it has. And so I would say that would be my main takeaway is remember to love the learning journey along the way.
Very well said, very inspiring. The whole session has been very inspiring for me, and I'm sure for our participants too. Thank you so much, Andreas. Thank you so much, Liesl, for joining us today, and look forward to having you at another webinar. We will keep this session alive for about 10 minutes. We'll mute ourselves, but if there are any questions or comments, myself and our speakers will respond to those. But have a good day, good rest of your day, and join us at another cyber webinar. Take care.